in the soft hush of Vatican corridors, where frescoes breathe stories into stone and time folds like parchment. There's a presence not written in the guides nor named in the light. He is not seen waving from balconies. He does not wear white. He does not smile to the cameras nor stand for earthly applause. And yet, his signature may shape the world. They call him the Black Pope, not for darkness indeed, but for the black cassock he wears, and the vast, silent reach of his authority. Where the Pope reigns in the open, the Black Pope governs in the folds. He is the superior general of the Society of Jesus, the Jesuits. And while history turns its gaze to pontiffs and saints, it often misses the hand that writes the margins. Tonight we trace the shadow, not with fear, but with reverence, not with scandal, but with still curiosity. For to understand the Black Pope is not to chase conspiracy, but to enter a centuries-old theater of influence, intellectual, spiritual, and unseen. The birth of two thrones. The Catholic Church has long moved in twin rhythms, one of revelation, one of preservation, one visible, crowned in gold, one quiet, rooted in discipline. Since the days of St. Ignatius of Loyola, the founder of the Jesuits in 1540, this second rhythm has found its conductor. The Pope is supreme, this we know, but no institution as old and layered as the Vatican moves with only one voice. Beneath, the dome structures converge, doctrinal, diplomatic, spiritual, and secret. And amid them, the Society of Jesus, the most intellectually feared and fiercely loyal religious order, holds unique autonomy. Its leader, the Superior General, is elected for life. Once chosen, he answers to no one but the Pope, and, in practice, rarely even to him. In time, people began to speak of two popes, one in white, the Bishop of Rome, one in black, the Jesuit General. The phrase Black Pope began as informal shorthand, uttered by diplomats and journalists in the 18th and 19th centuries. But soon it stuck, because it hinted at something unspoken, a truth we still find difficult to grasp, that the greatest power is not always loud, that true influence walks in silence, a cloak of obedience. To understand the man, we must understand the order. The Jesuits are not monks, not friars. They are missionaries, scholars, spies of the Spirit. Founded to defend and spread Catholicism after the Reformation, they became the Church's sharpest mind and longest reach. Their training is grueling, their allegiance absolute. Each Jesuit takes 4 vows: poverty, chastity, obedience, and a special vow of obedience to the Pope concerning missions. But within the order, their ultimate commander is the Superior General. He does not govern like a king. He does not rule like a priest. He directs a body that behaves like a quiet network, nimble, loyal, and global. From villages in Africa to universities in Paris, from confessionals in Boston to observatories in Arizona, Jesuits move with purpose, and their general knows where they are, what they write, whom they influence. When a Jesuit is sent to teach, or to counsel a leader, or to translate a dialect lost to time, he does not decide this alone. The general decides. And in that role, the Black Pope becomes not a symbol, but a strategist. Beyond the white robes, while the Pope sits at the center of Rome, the Jesuit general sits at its edge, just across the river, in a building with no great dome or lavish gallery. The Curia Generalizia, a modest structure by Vatican standards. And yet, behind those doors, decisions ripple outward into dozens of nations. The general receives intelligence reports, requests. He reviews theological research, hears of tensions in the field, reads coded letters from distant provinces. Is a leader of 15,000 men, priests trained in the art of influence. He does not need armies. He commands loyalty. And unlike the Pope, who may reign for a few years, sometimes reluctantly, the Black Pope is appointed for life and trained for decades. Where the papacy may shift with tides, the general's course is slow, studied, deliberate. It is no wonder, then, that some feared him, that some suspected him. That conspiracy whispered of manipulation. But the truth, as always, is quieter than fantasy. A man behind the curtain. The Black Pope does not give interviews. He rarely appears in public, and when he passes away, the world barely notices. Yet, within the Vatican, within the global church, his absence is felt like a missing weight, a quiet axis tilting. To know him, the man who held this role before. His death is to know restraint. He was a scholar of languages, a theologian of nuance, a traveler in thought rather than spectacle. He gave no stirring addresses. He stood in no parades, but he shaped minds and chose those who would shape others. He knew things we never will, correspondence never published, conflicts never named, meetings that lasted hours with words spoken once, then never repeated. It is said he carried a mental map of the world, not of nations, but of missions, not of borders, but of belief. Why secrets matter as we drift further into this story. Remember, this is not a tale of malevolence, but mystery. Not all secrets are dangerous. Some are simply too heavy for the day. Some are meant for dusk. The Black Pope was not a villain, nor a magician, nor a myth. He was a man who bore the weight of a global soul, with silence, with care, and perhaps with the ache of unspoken knowledge. And now that he is gone, the question lingers in the stillness. What truths did he carry into the dark? And what doors did he choose never to open? Long before the shadowed halls of the Vatican welcomed their quiet general, before the term Black Pope stirred whispers in the dusk, there was only a pilgrim limping through the ash of his old self, a soldier without a war, a soul without a master. In 1521, Inigo Lopez de Loyola lay shattered by cannon fire in the siege of Pamplona. His leg was broken, but something deeper cracked inside him, a fracture of purpose, a slow-burning silence that would echo for centuries. From that silence a society would rise, not an army of blades, but of minds, not crusaders of conquest, but of obedience. Tonight we follow the slow kindling of that fire, where a wounded knight became a mystic, and the world would never be the same. A room, a candle, a choice in the long recovery after his injury. Loyola, no longer a soldier of Spain nor of pride, found himself confined to a castle, his body stitched, his leg broken, his future vanished. There were no novels, no diversions, only 2 books in the family library, the life of Christ and lives of the saints. And in the flicker of candlelight, the soldier began to read. What stirred in him was not comfort. It was fire, a longing, a sharpening, a vision he imagined doing. forgot what he once dreamed of doing for empire. And so, when he could walk again, he left behind everything: title, inheritance, family. He walked to Montserrat, a Benedictine monastery, and there, beneath a black statue of the Virgin, he laid down his sword, forever, the vigil, and the cave from. There he entered a new world, not of monasteries, but of interior combat. He lived in a cave outside Manresa, a small town in Catalonia. There he fasted, wept, doubted, prayed, often for hours each day. He endured spiritual torment, visions, guilt, temptations of despair. And slowly he began to write. These notes, born in dirt, scribbled by candlelight, would later become the spiritual exercises, a method of training the soul as one might train a soldier. Discipline of thought, examination of conscience, total surrender of the will. It was not theology. It was spiritual strategy, and it would shape the hearts of generations. From one to many, in 1534, in a modest chapel atop Montmartre Hill in Paris, Loyola gathered 6 companions. They were students, thinkers, men of wildly different backgrounds. They vowed poverty, chastity, and to go wherever the Pope sent them, even to Jerusalem. They had no wealth, no weapons, no grand cathedral, but they had conviction, and perhaps more importantly, they had obedience. These 7 men became the seed of a new order, not monks in cloisters, but missionaries in motion. The Society of Jesus in 1540. Pope Paul III officially recognized the Society of Jesus. Unlike other orders, the Jesuits had no robes of distinction. They wore simple black. They avoided positions of church power, focused instead on education, confession, diplomacy. They believed that one well-trained man could transform a city, a mind could reshape a kingdom. A whisper in the right ear might prevent a war. They founded colleges across Europe, traveled to Asia, Africa, the Americas. They learned local languages. They debated emperors. They baptized kings. And always they reported back to Rome. In less than a century, the Jesuits had become the Church's most elite vanguard. The 4th vow. Most religious orders take 3 vows: poverty, chastity, and obedience. But Jesuits take a 4th, special obedience to the Pope in matters of mission. It is a vow of mobility, of surrender, of action. If the Pope says, "Go," the Jesuit does not ask where. He packs his bag. This vow, though simple in words, becomes the spine of the order's structure. It binds the Jesuit not only to God, but to a strategic command. To ensure that command stays clear and absolute, the Society appointed a man to enforce it, the Superior General, the architect of discipline. Unlike monks or friars who live under abbots, the Jesuits function as a mobile intellectual corps. They needed a leader who could oversee operations across continents. A spiritual commander. Loyola was elected the first Superior General in 1541. His title, Prepositus Generalis, the one who presides over all. He was no tyrant, but no Jesuit. Moved without his knowledge. No school was founded without his permission. No letter was without his blessing. He wrote over 7,000 letters in his lifetime, each one measured, thoughtful, absolute. He believed that discipline of the soul required discipline of the body and of the institution. And so the office of the general was born, not in vanity, but necessity, and it would become the backbone of Jesuit identity. The pulse beneath thrones within 100 years of its founding. The Society of Jesus was advising kings, shaping education, translating sacred texts, even guiding the formation of global trade. They were not loved by all. Protestants feared their subtlety. Colonial powers feared their influence. Even within the Church, bishops and cardinals grew wary. But the Jesuits answered to none of them, only to the general, and only to the Pope. It was this independence, this vast intellectual and global loyalty, that made them both vital and dangerous. By the 17th century, the nickname emerged in earnest, the Black Pope, because the general moved as if he were one. He held a title for life. He led thousands across the world. He wore black, not white, and while the Pope ruled the Church, the Black Pope ruled its most elite force. Born in fire, sustained in silence, the Jesuits were born of violence, but matured in silence. From cannon fire to caves, from private vows to public impact, their path has always been one of paradox. Action rooted in stillness, power held with restraint. Presence veiled in absence. As we rest tonight beneath the branches of history, we remember the beginnings, not with alarm, but awe. For whatever one believes of the Jesuits, saints or strategists, shepherds or schemers, their rise from a wounded soldier's bed to the vaulted corridors of global influence is a story. Few can ignore. And in that story, always standing at the helm, is a man chosen not to be seen, but to see everything. In the next chapter, we will walk with him, the superior general himself, as the cassock of black takes on a new weight, and the man behind the order becomes a myth in his own right. Let the fire of purpose dim to embers now. Let your mind drift gently, for we walk in shadows, but not in fear. He does not walk with fanfare. No marble statues bear his likeness. His voice does not echo from balconies. And yet, in the quiet halls of the Curia, his footsteps shift. The future. He wears no crown, no crimson ring. Only black, a cassock of modest wool, worn not as a symbol of mourning, but of mission. He is the Black Pope, the superior general of the Society of Jesus, elected for life, obeyed without question, invisible and yet indispensable. As we step deeper into this story, we now focus not on the origin of the Jesuits, but on the man who guides them, who becomes them, who disappears into the order until only the role remains. What does it mean to ascend into power that cannot be seen? A life chosen by shadows. The man who becomes superior general is not ambitious. He is trained to suppress ambition, to kill it, in fact. Jesuit formation demands indifference, a state of willing surrender to God's will, whether that means sweeping floors in silence or leading an empire of minds. And yet, when the time comes, when the current general dies or steps down, a gathering occurs. Jesuits from every continent, each elected by their peers, convene in Rome for what is known as the General Congregation. There are no campaigns, no posters, no promises, only prayer, silence, discernment. And then one name rises, a man who likely never wanted it, a man chosen not for charisma, but for clarity, not for boldness, but for balance. The cassock, the chain once elected, the man's life changes forever. He becomes the Propositus Generalis, the general overseer. His role, to govern the Society of Jesus across the globe, to serve as the final word in matters of mission, discipline, education, and doctrine. He wears the same cassock as every other Jesuit, simple, unadorned. But when he walks, decisions ripple outward. A new school in Chile, a quiet mission to a troubled region, a reshaping of curriculum in 500 universities, a silent reproof to a Jesuit veering from the path. He holds no scepter, and yet every Jesuit is bound to him by vow, not through fear, but through formation. His is a chain of interior command, forged in spiritual exercises, tested over decades, of obedience and tempered by trust. The general's desk in Rome, on the Borgo Santo Spirito, not far from the Vatican walls, lies the Curia Generalizia, the Jesuit headquarters. Unlike the papal palace, it is quiet, unadorned. Here, the superior general rises early. He reads reports from 30 or more provinces, each a different corner of the world, from a boarding school in Nairobi, from an underground retreat in China, from a seminary in Quebec, from a refugee clinic in Lebanon. Each line a pulse, each request a decision. The general must know not only the state of Jesuit missions, but the state of the world. Politics, theology, education, conflict. He is not a CEO. He is not a bishop. He is something in between, a shepherd of minds, a voice without a pulpit, though his influence is vast. The Black Pope does not address crowds. He is not the Church's public voice. He writes few books, gives even fewer interviews. Instead, he listens. He writes letters, often hundreds per year, guiding young Jesuits, correcting courses, inspiring direction. He meets with the Pope in private, and though he may shape doctrine, his fingerprints rarely remain visible. He advises. He defers. He moves the mind of the order like a hand turning pages, carefully, without creasing. Whispers from below to outsiders. Such invisible power provokes suspicion. In times of upheaval, the Jesuits have been accused of many things: conspiracies, subversion, the quiet manipulation of monarchs and markets. But the truth is subtler. The Black Pope is not a kingmaker. He is a guardian of direction, ensuring that Jesuits remain aligned with their charism. Still, power hidden is power misunderstood, and over centuries the superior general has become a subject of fascination, especially to those who mistake silence for secrecy. The weight of lifelong command. Most leaders retire. They age, fade, hand over the reins, but for centuries the superior general served until death. This meant decades of stewardship, through wars, reformations, schisms, and renewals. It meant carrying the hopes of 15,000 Jesuits, while weathering the fears of those who watched from outside. Only in 2008 did this tradition begin to shift, when Peter Hans Calvin-Bach, the 29th general, asked to resign due to age and health. His request was granted, and the world saw for the first time in centuries a Black Pope step down voluntarily. His successor, Adolfo Nicolas, was elected in similar silence, a man of deep humility, known for wit and wisdom. He, too, would die in near anonymity, but his decisions would shape education and justice across continents. Anonymity as armor. To be the Black Pope is to be a vessel, not a brand, to fade into the mission, to direct without demanding, to choose influence over impression. And this, perhaps more than anything, is why the role remains so powerful. Because it resists spectacle. The superior general does not create policy. He cultivates discernment. He does not impose doctrine. He ensures unity. In a world hungry for spotlight, his strength lies in the quiet. The man becomes the mission once elected. The superior general is no longer simply himself. He becomes the embodiment of the order's conscience. It bears its contradictions, its legacy, its future. His words are measured, his gestures symbolic. His silence is often louder than speeches. Jesuits say he becomes the second founder, because each general must interpret the vision of Ignatius for his own age. Colonialism, communism, globalism, secularism. Each century offers new terrain, and the general must chart a path through it, not with a sword, but with a compass of spirit. A quiet throne. As we close our eyes tonight, let us imagine not a cathedral, but a study, a wooden desk, a letter half finished, a map pinned with threads, a man in black reviewing a report from a mission few know exists. He adjusts his glasses. He writes a single line. He sets down his pen. Tomorrow it will change lives. Tonight it changes nothing, because true authority often lives in what is not said, in what is chosen to remain still. And so the black cassock ascends, not to heights of spectacle, but to depths of intention. Within the quiet of cloistered rooms and sunlit study halls, there lies a vow unlike any other, a promise whispered softly, yet binding as iron. The fourth vow, a sacred pledge, one that elevates obedience beyond the ordinary, tying the soul not just to God, but to the invisible thread of mission itself. It is a vow of surrender, of movement without question, of silence without dissent, a promise that shapes destinies far beyond the monastery walls, and holds the society of Jesus in a tight, unbreakable circle of trust. Tonight, we explore this vow, not as a chain, but as a compass, guiding the Black Pope and his order through centuries of tempest and calm. A promise rooted in trust. Obedience is the heartbeat of Jesuit life. The first three vows, poverty, chastity, and obedience, are common among religious orders, but the fourth vow is distinct, personal, and profound. It pledges complete and special obedience to the Roman Pontiff, not simply to the Church, but directly to the Pope himself in matters of mission and apostolic work. This means the superior general, and all Jesuits bound to him, are ready to be sent anywhere, do anything, without hesitation or question. It is a surrender not born from fear, but from faith, a chain that binds and frees. At first glance, obedience may seem like captivity, a cage for the will, a silence forced, but within the Jesuit tradition, it is quite the opposite. Obedience becomes the soil where freedom grows, freedom from ego, freedom from chaos, freedom to act with clarity. By surrendering personal desire, the Jesuit becomes open to a higher purpose, a collective movement flowing like water through many hands, yet directed by a single, unifying source. This is the secret of the fourth vow. It is a chain that binds not to imprison, but to liberate. The superior general, guardian of the fourth vow, the Black Pope's authority, springs from this vow. He is not a monarch ruling by fiat, but a servant leading by example. His power lies in the trust he earns from his brothers scattered across the globe. In missions that range from bustling cities to the remotest jungles, Jesuits follow him, not because he commands, but because they believe he listens, that his decisions flow from prayer, discernment, and fidelity to Ignatius's vision. In this, the superior general becomes a spiritual general, not of armies, but of souls. A promise tested by history, the fourth vow has not been without its trials. During the turbulent centuries of the Reformation, Jesuits were sent into dangerous lands, sometimes to protect the Church, sometimes to confront heresy. The vow demanded courage. Sometimes it demanded silence. In the shadows of politics, the Jesuits walked a razor's edge between obedience to Rome and the demands of local powers. Their loyalty was questioned, their intentions doubted, but through every storm the fourth vow held firm, a beacon of unity amidst fracturing worlds. A silent conspiracy? Some have whispered that this vow is the root of the Jesuitian mythos, that it binds them into a secret society with hidden agendas, that the Black Pope wields shadowy influence over kings and emperors. Yet in truth, the vow creates discipline, not deception. It is a spiritual covenant, not a political one. Jesuits are trained to discern carefully, to obey not blindly, but with reflective conscience, to question in silence, pray for clarity, and then surrender. This subtlety is often misunderstood. Weight of choice, the fourth vow demands a surrender of personal will, yet it is a choice made freely, repeatedly, throughout a Jesuit's life. It is renewed in the final profession, a moment of profound reflection, when the Jesuit declares himself ready to be sent wherever God's mission calls. This moment is both humble and heroic. It signals the death of self-interest and the birth of a broader purpose. It is here that obedience transforms into an act of love. Love for the Church, yes, but also love for the world it serves. The order moves as one through the fourth vow. The Society of Jesus moves not as scattered individuals, but as a single body, fluid, responsive, coordinated. Whether establishing schools in the Americas, negotiating peace in Asia, or teaching theology in Europe, Jesuits carry this promise as their guiding star. It is why they have been so effective, because they act not as isolated agents, but as a united force. The Black Pope at the helm ensures this unity. He is the keeper of the vow, the guardian of mission. A legacy carved in silence. Centuries of obedience have created a legacy not written in monuments, but in whispered decisions made in private rooms. The Black Pope's influence often escapes notice, yet it shapes the paths of millions, from classrooms to cathedrals, from royal courts to remote villages. The fourth vow keeps the society's heart beating steadily, even as the world changes in ways impossible to foresee. Resting in the promise as the night deepens and your breath slows. Imagine the vow as a quiet stream, ever flowing beneath the surface of great rivers and storms. It neither forces nor controls. It invites. It beckons, a call to surrender, not to loss, but to transformation. And in that gentle yielding, the Black Pope finds his strength. Not in power seized, but in power entrusted. Under the endless dome of sky, beyond the ancient stone of Europe, the Society of Jesus began to weave its story across continents. From the bustling ports of Lisbon to the lush forests of Brazil, from the mysterious temples of Japan to the frozen plains of Canada, Jesuit footsteps traced new paths, silent, purposeful, unyielding dot. They were more than missionaries. They were wanderers of spirit and mind, ambassadors of faith and culture, architects of schools and bridges, bringers of books, medicine, and naps to lands untouched by European eyes. Tonight, let us follow these quiet footsteps, carrying black cassocks into unfamiliar worlds, where mystery and miracle mingled beneath foreign stars. The first voyage in 1541, just 1 year after the Society's official recognition, a man named Francisco Xavier set sail from Lisbon. His destination, India, then Japan, and beyond. He was no ordinary priest, a linguist, a scholar, a man with a heart stretched wide enough to embrace whole cultures. He learned local tongues, adopted native customs, and moved with the patience of a river carving stone. His letters home spoke of wonders and challenges, of rice paddies and shrines, of kindness and persecution. He was a pioneer in a spiritual wilderness-education, as mission Jesuits understood early that faith and education are twin flames. Their missions were not just to convert, but to enlighten. They founded schools and universities, not cloistered seminaries, but places of learning open to all. In Rome, the Collegio Romano became a beacon of scholarship. In the New World, schools nurtured indigenous leaders. Their classrooms were laboratories of culture, where theology met philosophy. Science mingled with art. In these spaces, Jesuits cultivated dialogue, planting seeds of understanding that would bloom over centuries. Bridges between worlds in China, Jesuits took a different path. Rather than demand conversion, they embraced cultural exchange. Figures like Matteo Ricci donned Chinese robes, learned Confucian classics, and entered imperial courts as advisors and scientists. They introduced European astronomy and mathematics, while respectfully translating and preserving Chinese traditions. Through this delicate dance, Jesuits became bridges, crossing not just oceans, but worlds of meaning. Conflict and compromise not all encounters were peaceful. In Japan, initial openness gave way to suspicion and persecution. Jesuits found themselves caught between the desires of local rulers and the mandates of Rome. In the Americas, missions faced the complexities of colonialism. Jesuits sometimes protected indigenous peoples from exploitation, yet were also agents of cultural change, sometimes at great cost. These tensions shaped the Society's global identity, a balance of power and humility, conviction and caution. Maps of spirit and earth. Jesuits were also explorers and cartographers. Their detailed reports informed Europe's knowledge of the world. They mapped rivers, mountains, and stars, blending scientific inquiry with spiritual purpose. In remote regions, Jesuits documented languages and customs, preserving fragments of cultures now lost to time. Their journeys were not just physical, but intellectual voyages, expanding the boundaries of what was known and imagined. The invisible network, though scattered across the globe, Jesuits remained connected by letters and obedience. Their missions formed a vast, invisible network, each province aware of the other, each step coordinated by the general in Rome. This network was a silent power, a spiritual web that linked the Pope to distant lands, and linked those lands back to the heart of the Church. A legacy in stone and spirit. Many Jesuit missions left lasting marks. Baroque churches rising in jungle clearings, colleges that became modern universities, manuscripts preserving ancient Wisdom. Yet their greatest legacy was less visible, and the lives transformed, the ideas exchanged. The delicate dialogues between cultures. Jesuits showed the world that faith could be both a light and a bridge, a call to belief and an invitation to understand. Resting beneath foreign stars as you settle into quiet now, imagine the footsteps of those first Jesuits crossing oceans under unfamiliar constellations, their prayers rising like incense into alien skies. They carried not swords, but pens and books, not banners, but open hands, and through their journeys, the Society of Jesus became more than an order. It became a living thread, weaving together disparate worlds with patience and grace. In the shadowed chambers of Rome, where sunlight filters softly through stained glass, the Black Pope gathers his closest confidants, not in grand halls filled with echoes, but in quiet rooms where whispers carry the weight of centuries. Here, beneath frescoed ceilings and flickering candlelight, decisions are made that ripple across oceans and generations. Silent conversations, careful counsels, the pulse of the society beating in hushed rhythms. Tonight, we enter this intimate world, where power is wielded not with clamor, but with calm, and the Black Pope listens more than he speaks. The councils, quiet assembly unlike the public grandeur of the Vatican. Jesuit councils convene with simplicity and solemnity. The superior general summons trusted advisers, provincials, theologians, strategists, men of deep faith and sharp minds. Their discussions stretch long into nights, untangling complex questions of doctrine, mission, and morality. Each voice is weighed carefully, each word measured with the precision of a jeweler examining a precious gem. The room holds the tension of responsibility, knowing that every choice shapes not only the society's path, but the spiritual journeys of countless souls. The art of discernment. Jesuit decision-making is an art, rooted in Ignatius's spiritual exercises, a practice of prayerful reflection that hones the ability to perceive God's will amid chaos. Councils do not rush to judgment. They sit in silence. They listen to the stirrings of conscience. They test ideas against scripture, tradition, and the needs of the moment. This slow-burning process nurtures wisdom, a patience born from faith, not fear. The Black Pope guides this dance, not as a commander issuing orders, but as a humble servant seeking clarity in the stillness. Secrets carried like stones within these meetings. Secrets accumulate. Whispers of political intrigue, delicate negotiations, and fragile alliances. The society has long been entwined with rulers and rulers' courts, sometimes protecting the vulnerable, sometimes navigating treacherous waters. Yet these confidences are held sacred, not to conceal malice, but to safeguard mission. The Black Pope becomes a guardian of these stones, each one heavy with consequence, each one laid carefully beneath the foundation of the order. A history of quiet power over centuries, many general. Congregations have grappled with crises, wars raging beyond their walls, heresies challenging belief, and cultural shifts demanding new responses. Their resolutions shaped the Church's direction, often before the wider world even knew a decision had been made. Through the ebb and flow of history, the Jesuits remained a stabilizing force. There, councils like anchors in turbulent seas. The Black Pope's authority, though unseen, became a steady beacon. Balancing light and shadow. Power in silence can breed suspicion. Some accused the Jesuits of secret plots, hidden agendas, and shadow governments. Yet, within the whispered councils, power is tempered by conscience. Debates are honest, sometimes heated, but always rooted in the pursuit of truth. The Black Pope's role is to balance light and shadow, to ensure transparency within the order, even as some matters must remain confidential to protect lives and missions. The weight of a whisper, each decision, though quiet, carries immense weight, choosing where to send missionaries, determining responses to political upheavals, addressing doctrinal questions that could fracture belief. These are not tasks for haste. The Black Pope carries this burden with grace, aware that a single whispered word could change the course of history. The unseen hand, though the world may never glimpse these councils, their impact is everywhere. In the founding of universities, the shaping of theology, the quiet spread of education and justice, the Black Pope, working behind the veil, shapes the destiny of the society and by extension the Church itself. His hand moves like a shadow, guiding without spectacle, influencing without claim. A moment to reflect as your breath deepens and your eyelids grow heavy. Picture these quiet rooms once more, a glow of candlelight, the rustle of robes, the soft murmur of voices folded in prayer. In the stillness, great power moves gently, and history turns on whispered councils. In the quiet corners of ancient colleges and monasteries, behind heavy oak doors and shelves that seem to whisper, lie the treasures of centuries, volumes that hold the pulse of knowledge bound in leather. And silence, waiting for patient eyes. The Jesuits, known for their restless mission across the globe, were also guardians of wisdom, custodians of books that told stories not only of faith, but of science, philosophy, and secrets too delicate for the light. Tonight we wander these shadowed halls, where every page turned is a step deeper into mystery, and every whispered word is a bridge to forgotten worlds. The foundation of Jesuit scholarship. From their earliest days, the Society of Jesus prized learning as a sacred gift. Ignatius himself envisioned a brotherhood steeped in study, a learned order able to meet the challenges of the modern world. Jesuit colleges became havens for manuscripts, ancient and new. Latin texts mingled with rare treatises from the East and West. Philosophy danced with emerging scientific inquiry. These libraries were not mere collections. They were living archives of human thought, vast, intricate tapestries of wisdom. The forbidden and the precious among the many volumes were texts that stirred controversy, philosophical works banned by church authorities, scientific discoveries, challenging orthodox beliefs, heretical manuscripts whispered about in fearful tones. Jesuits preserved these fragile treasures, balancing reverence with curiosity. In some cases, books were hidden away, locked in secret compartments or buried within walls, safe from inquisitors and censors. Here, knowledge was both power and peril. A network of scholars' Jesuit libraries were not isolated. They formed a network spanning continents. Scholars exchanged letters and copies, sharing ideas in coded scripts and careful translations. This invisible web connected Rome, Paris, Goa, and beyond, a dialogue that crossed borders and epochs. Through this, the Black Pope held not only spiritual authority, but intellectual influence, a silent guardian of ideas that shaped the modern world. The role of the archivist in each library, a careful custodian watched over the collection, not simply a librarian, but a keeper of secrets, deciding who could access which volumes, and when. The archivist balanced trust and caution, aware that a single page in the wrong hands could ignite scandal or persecution. This role carried weight and loneliness, a sacred duty to protect not just books, but the fragile threads of knowledge they held. Mysteries. Within manuscripts, some Jesuit texts contain more than ink and paper, maps with hidden symbols, coded languages, esoteric diagrams. These manuscripts hinted at lost wisdom, ancient sciences, mystical traditions, and secrets of nature's hidden laws. Deciphering them required patience, faith, and a mind open to wonder. Many such texts remain unexplored, waiting silently in their dusty sanctuaries. The Black Pope's Secret. Library legend tells of a private collection known only to the superior general, a library so rarefied that few have glimpsed its contents. Within, it is said, lie manuscripts, banned elsewhere, treatises on forbidden knowledge, records of missions cloaked in mystery. This secret library is both a symbol and a tool, a wellspring of insight for those who lead in silence. Knowledge as power and protection. Jesuit scholarship was never just academic. It was a means of survival and influence. By mastering languages, sciences, and arts, Jesuits gained respect in courts and kingdoms, building bridges and softening conflicts. Their libraries became sources of counsel for rulers, silent weapons. In battles of diplomacy and faith. Through knowledge, the Black Pope's reach extended far beyond Rome's walls. A quiet legacy as the night deepens and your thoughts begin to drift. Imagine the scent of old parchment and leather, the gentle rustle of pages turning under candlelight. Picture a world where knowledge is a secret garden, protected with care, nurtured with reverence. The Jesuits walk these gardens still, guardians of wisdom, keepers of silent truth. It is rare for a voice so powerful to be silenced, rarer still for that silence to last a generation, and then be undone. But in the 18th century, the Society of Jesus, once the most trusted hand of the Church, was extinguished by papal decree. It did not fall in battle. It was not overthrown by sword or fire. Instead, it was unmade by paper and ink, by the pressure of kings and a church caught between alliances. Tonight, we enter this quiet storm when the Black Pope's voice was cut mid-sentence, and his order vanished into whispers. The height before the fall. By the mid-1700s, the Jesuits were everywhere. They ran more than 800 colleges and missions. They were confessors to kings, advisors to emperors, and teachers to the sons of nobility. Their scholars translated sacred texts. Their missionaries mapped the edges of the known world. They had become, in many eyes, too influential. And in the courts of Europe, that influence began to feel dangerous. Jesuits were loyal first to their general and ultimately to the Pope, but to kings who sought control over their own clergy, that loyalty felt like betrayal. The Society of Jesus, born in loyalty, now stood accused of subversion. Enemies in the palaces. The storm began to brew in Portugal. Prime Minister Marquis de Pombal, reform-minded and ruthless, saw the Jesuits as relics of a past he wished to erase. He accused them of meddling in colonial affairs, of opposing royal reforms. Soon, Spain and France followed. Pressure mounted on the papacy to suppress the order. Jesuits were accused of controlling education, of undermining monarchies, of spreading rebellion in the colonies. Rumors replaced facts. Fear replaced trust. And across Europe, a quiet coup unfolded. The brief without a trial in 1773, under relentless pressure, Pope Clement XIV issued a decree known as Dominus Ac Redemptor. With it, the Society of Jesus ceased to exist. The Superior General, Lorenzo Ricci, was imprisoned in Castel Sant'Angelo. No trial, no protest allowed. Jesuit properties were seized. Schools closed. Libraries looted. Missions dismantled. It was as if a great library had been set aflame, not with fire, but with forgetfulness. The silence was sudden, and it was meant to be permanent. The general in a cell, Lorenzo Ricci, died in 1775, still in captivity. He left behind no final statement, no manifesto, only silence. And yet, it is said he remained calm to the end, resigned, but not broken. His death marked the lowest hour of the society. The office of the Black Pope, once so feared, now lay empty. But within that silence, something remained. A fire beneath the ashes. Though the Jesuits were disbanded, they did not vanish. In Russia and Prussia, where the papal decree was ignored, Jesuit communities quietly continued. Catherine the Great, no friend of Rome, allowed them to teach and serve. Elsewhere, former Jesuits found subtle ways to carry on, writing under pseudonyms, teaching in exile, preserving Ignatius's spiritual exercises in secret, like seeds buried. In frozen ground, the society waited. Not in protest, but in patient, faithful stillness. The resurrection 41 years passed. In 1814, a new pope sat on the throne, Pius VII. The tides had turned. The world had changed. And the silence broke. In a brief titled Solicitudo Omnium Ecclesiarum, the Society of Jesus was fully restored. It was as though a long-buried bell was rung again. Across Europe and the Americas, former Jesuits emerged from shadow, reclaiming colleges, rebuilding missions, reweaving their quiet network. A resurrection not of triumph, but of steady return, a humble reawakening. The restored society was different, older, wiser. No longer the favored confessors of kings. They turned instead toward education and justice, toward the needs of the poor and the power of the Word. The Black Pope once again took up his mantle, but with a quieter step and a deeper awareness of how fragile influence can be. Lessons in silence, the suppression taught the Jesuits a paradox, that loyalty does not always protect, and truth can be lost in noise, but it also taught resilience. They learned to lead without visibility, to serve without position, and the Black Pope, now returned, carried with him the memory of silence, a reminder that power held too tightly can vanish, and yet in stillness it can also return, the quiet power of survival. As you drift toward sleep, let your thoughts settle on the idea of survival, not the loud, defiant kind, but the quiet, enduring kind. The Jesuits were erased from the page, but not from the margins. They returned, not with anger, but with ink, with books, with schools. The Black Pope resumed his quiet work, knowing that some truths live not in defiance, but in patience. In the age of microphones and microphones, where power wears a suit and speaks from podiums, the Jesuits remain not absent, but discreet, they still move through the corridors of power, still whisper beside thrones and treaty tables, still shape minds behind the veil of scholarship, and advise quietly from corners most never see. Tonight, we step into the 20th and 21st centuries, where the Black Pope's reach may be more silent than ever, but not less profound. A changing world, a steady hand as the world moved through war and revolution. Technology and ideology redrew its borders and beliefs. The old empires crumbled. New ideologies, communism, capitalism, fascism rose like storm fronts. The church itself was changing, and the Society of Jesus, ever adaptive, began shaping its role to fit the new terrain. Jesuit schools became more global, their students often destined for the highest offices in law, economics, diplomacy. The society was no longer just converting pagans, it was preparing policymakers, and at its helm the superior general guided not doctrine alone, but influence. The Jesuit educational empire no other religious order can rival the Jesuits in the sheer breadth of their intellectual legacy. Over 200 universities, thousands of high schools and colleges, from Boston to Bogota, from Manila to Milan. The black robe became a symbol of elite education. Graduates of Jesuit institutions entered government, media, finance, and defense. Many became bishops. Some became heads of state. The Black Pope didn't need to speak publicly. He could trust the minds the society had shaped to carry the society's spirit into boardrooms and briefings. An order close to power. Jesuits have long served as spiritual directors and advisors to world leaders. They do not govern by force. They influence through formation, a shaping of conscience over years of guided thought. During the Cold War, Jesuit scholars warned of nuclear madness. In Latin America, Jesuits stood beside liberation theologians and the poor. In Africa, they negotiated peace between factions. In the United States, they walked the line between faith and policy. To the outsider, the Jesuit may look like a teacher or counselor, but beneath the modest collar lies a mind sharpened by years of strategic, reflective discipline. The Black Pope reads reports of these quiet agents. He watches, not with control, but with coordination, always seeing the whole while others see only the part. The general as global compass. The superior general must understand the world, not as nations or headlines, but as a body, wounded in some places, restless in others, yet always capable of healing and change. He receives letters from provinces in crisis, civil war in Congo, religious persecution in India, political upheaval in Brazil. He reviews academic papers, monitors curriculum trends, and ensures that no Jesuit college becomes merely a brand, but remains a mission. In Rome, he meets discreetly with Vatican officials, sometimes with heads of state, sometimes with no one, just his thoughts and the weight of decisions. Political without partisanship. Jesuits often stand accused of being political, but the Black Pope does not push platforms. He pushes discernment. Jesuits are trained to read the signs of the times, to speak truth to power, but never to become power's servant. They challenge injustice, not for revolution, but for restoration. This has earned them both praise and exile. In El Salvador, 6 Jesuit priests were murdered in 1989, their work with the poor seen as dangerous by the ruling regime. The Black Pope did not hold press conferences. He mourned, he directed, he sent others. in their place, because the mission is not silenced by violence. It is only made clearer, the delicate dance with Rome. The relationship between the Vatican and the Jesuits has never been simple. Popes have relied on the society's intellect, yet feared its independence. Jesuits swear obedience, but they also question. They are loyal, but not passive. And the Black Pope, though answerable to the White One, often walks a narrow line, protecting the society's integrity while honoring Rome's authority. He knows when to bow and when to simply remain still. The Jesuit identity crisis in modern times. The society has wrestled with its place. Some accused it of drifting left, of losing doctrinal rigor in favor of activism. Others feared it had become too academic, too removed from everyday faith. Inside the order, debates raged. Should Jesuits remain at the frontiers of theology, or return to a more obedient conservatism? The Black Pope listened. He rarely ruled by fiat. Instead, he fostered discernment across provinces. And from this, a new balance began to emerge, a society still engaged, still intellectual, but rooted once more in its spiritual exercises. The Black Pope in the digital age. In the 21st century, the superior general remains mostly invisible. He does not have a Twitter account. He is not a media figure, but he knows what must be watched. Online misinformation, the erosion of truth, the rise of artificial intelligence, and the loss of soul. His influence is felt not in likes or shares, but in papers, policies, and quiet conversations with those who shape the future. An invisible ministry to the world. The Black Pope may seem distant, but his ministry is everywhere. In a high school classroom where a Jesuit teaches ethics, in a conflict zone where a Jesuit doctor treats the wounded, in a quiet retreat where a Jesuit guides someone through grief. He will never meet most of them, but through the structure he oversees, his spirit is present. The Black Pope is not a man. He is a ministry. A closing reflection as your thoughts begin to settle into stillness. Imagine again that simple black robe, worn by men who shape the world without seeking attention. The halls they walk are not only made of stone, they are made of minds and hearts, and hidden doors. Tonight we have walked through one such hall, where the Jesuit mission quietly shapes the modern world. In our next chapter, we will descend into the archives to explore the Vatican's forbidden vaults and what the Black Pope may have seen that others were never meant to. Breathe deeply. The robe may be black, but the mind behind it shines with quiet light. Beneath the stone and gold of Vatican City, where saints gaze down from their painted heavens and marble saints line the halls, with quiet blessing there lies a place few have ever entered. No windows, no voices raised above a whisper, just long corridors of locked drawers, ancient scrolls sealed in leather, letters written by trembling hands, and secrets buried in dust. This is the Archivum Secretum Vaticanum, the Vatican Secret Archives. And among those few who may have walked these silent halls freely, there is one figure whose footsteps never echoed loudly, but whose eyes may have read what even popes dared not disturb. The Black Pope. Tonight we descend with him into the vaults of memory, into the graveyard of forbidden truth. The door within the city, behind the apostolic palace, near the shadow of St. Peter's dome, there is an entrance most pilgrims will never see. A heavy door beneath an unmarked archway, guarded not by force, but by protocol. Only the highest scholars, cardinals with cause, and certain superiors of trusted orders may request access to what lies within. Even then, permission is not easily granted. Yet for the superior general of the Jesuits, trusted with matters of doctrine, intelligence, and conscience, the doors may have opened. Not often, not openly, but perhaps when it mattered most. A repository of power. The archives are vast. Over 85 kilometers of shelving, more than 50 miles of quiet memory. Inside, treaties, letters from emperors, trial transcripts, excommunication records, scientific debates silenced. Before they could bloom. There are reports of Galileo's trial, accounts of secret conclaves, handwritten exchanges between popes and kings, notes in faded ink from times when the world teetered on the edge of change. And beyond these, more cryptic volumes, accounts of visions, forbidden theologies, and perhaps darker things, Jesuit eyes among shadows. For centuries, Jesuits have been the intellectual guardians of the Church. Their role has always required knowledge, deep, complete, and sometimes dangerous. When crises emerged, heretical movements, theological disputes, the shadow of schism, it was often the Jesuits who were called to advise. To advise well. They had to know everything. And so the Black Pope may have entered these archives not as a seeker of scandal, but as a shepherd of knowledge, reading letters between lost missionaries, examining disputed dogma, studying the Church's buried past, in order to guide its future. His visits, if they occurred, would be undocumented. His discoveries never spoken aloud. His memory the only record. What must remain hidden. All truth is meant for daylight. Some documents in the archives are sealed indefinitely. Their contents too volatile, too misunderstood, or too painful for the present. There are whispered mentions of a gospel lost to canon, papal alliances with regimes long condemned, prophecies never read aloud. Reports from exorcists whose words were buried with them. Whether these are myth or reality is not for us to say, but the Black Pope may have known, and if he knew, he carried those truths alone. The key and the silence. Jesuits are trained in discretion. They do not reveal what is not theirs to speak. And the Black Pope, entrusted with so much more, lives, with a deeper discipline still. Even if he read the letters that shaped crusades, or the testimony of saints whose sainthood was quietly denied, he would never reveal them, not to protect power, but to protect something older, the delicate balance between belief and burden. For some truths, once spoken, cannot be unspoken, and not all souls are ready to hear them. A living archive, but the secret archives are not only memory. They are prophecy, too. The Black Pope may have consulted them not to study the past, but to understand what must come next. Inside, patterns emerge, cycles of reform and resistance, echoes of ideological decay and renewal. Perhaps within those pages he saw warnings of the age we now live in, of the battles not of sword and creed, but of meaning itself. Between dust and revelation, there is something sacred about dust. It quiets the world, hides sharp edges, makes even violence soft. The pages of the archives are heavy with it, and the Black Pope, stepping through them, would not disturb it lightly. He would read, reflect, and then close the cover. Some pages were never meant to turn again. a cloak of unknowing as we lie beneath the stars tonight. Let us accept what the Black Pope accepted, that some truths are not denied, only delayed. That knowledge can be both medicine and poison, and wisdom lies in knowing when to offer either. He bore this responsibility not with pride, but with quiet sorrow, because to carry secrets is to grow old in a way no one sees. Ah, final thought beneath the vaults, breathe deeply now. Let the shadows of these ancient halls fall away. Let the silence of the archive cradle you. Whatever the Black Pope read in those vaulted depths, whatever secrets he took to his grave, he held them not for power, but for the fragile peace of a world not ready to receive them. But in our next chapter, we will turn our gaze to the sky, to the unexpected intersection of the Vatican and the cosmos, and the Jesuit eyes that search the stars, perhaps in search of something even older than Scripture. Sleep now. The past is at rest, and so are you, while many picture the Vatican in candlelight and parchment, with incense curling beneath stone arches and monks bowed in prayer. Few imagine telescopes aimed skyward, or priests recording the motions of distant galaxies. And yet, among the society of Jesus, men of vow and virtue, there are those who wear white lab coats over black cassocks, who speak the language of light years, and listen not only for the voice of God, but for the silence between the stars. Tonight we lift our eyes with them, to trace the sky as they did, not to map dominion, but to understand the divine geometry behind the veil of night, the stars above the dome. For centuries, the Jesuits were tasked with understanding the heavens, not just spiritually, but scientifically. In the Gregorian reforms of the calendar in 1582, it was Jesuit astronomers who advised the Pope, aligning time itself more closely with the true rhythms of the cosmos. They believed, as Ignatius taught, that truth has one source, whether found in Scripture or in stars. To study the universe was not rebellion. It was reverence. From Rome to the moon, by the 19th century, the Jesuits had become world-class astronomers. They operated observatories across Europe and Asia, cataloging stars, mapping lunar terrain, and contributing to early astrophysics. Jesuit astronomer Giovanni Battista Riccioli helped name many of the features on the moon's surface, names still used by NASA today. These men lived between paradoxes, bound by vows of silence, yet contributing to the loudest revelations of human history. The Vatican Observatory. In 1891, Pope Leo XIII formalized the Church's commitment to science, founding the Specula Vaticana, the Vatican Observatory, initially based on the walls of the Vatican itself. It was soon relocated to Castel Gandolfo, the papal summer residence, where clearer skies allowed better views of the heavens. Here, Jesuit scientists continued their work, measuring spectral shifts, charting the movement of comets, and building bridges between theology and physics. It was not spectacle. It was quiet study, carried out with devotion. Arizona, eyes in the desert as light pollution in Rome grew worse. The Jesuit astronomers looked west. In the late 20th century, they established a new observatory on Mount Graham, Arizona, a remote peak sacred to indigenous tribes, chosen for its clarity of sky and rare atmospheric stability. Here, under American stars, the Vatican Observatory Research Group continues its work, Jesuits from around the world collaborating with astrophysicists and cosmologists at this intersection of prayer and particle. They search for dark matter, exoplanets, and the fingerprints of creation itself. The Black Pope's quiet approval, while the Superior General does not build telescopes. He watches over this work as carefully as any mission. He sees its place in the Jesuit calling, to seek God in all things, even in the swirling hearts of distant nebulae. And perhaps, in quiet moments, he reads the reports sent from Mount Graham, not to verify equations, but to understand how the stars still speak in silence. He knows that among his priests are explorers of light, mapping the space between the infinite and the known, cosmic questions. Human hearts, Jesuit astronomers are not seeking to prove God's existence. They do not need to. Their work is a celebration of mystery, a dialogue with the unknown. They ask, what came before the first light? Is the universe finite? Are we alone? And in their questions they hear echoes of older prayers, of monks gazing skyward long before telescopes, of prophets counting stars in desert nights. The questions have changed. The awe remains. The God of galaxies and genes, the Jesuit scientific tradition, does not stop with astronomy. They have explored seismology, mathematics, linguistics, biology, and medicine, often at the front edge of discovery. Jesuit paleontologist Pierre Teilhard de Chardin walked the cliffs of China, unearthing ancient skulls and daring to imagine evolution as not contradiction, but revelation. For his views he was silenced by Rome, but even silence carries seeds. And today his writings inspire physicists and theologians alike. Faith and the expanding universe. The stars began to stretch away, as Hubble discovered. The universe was expanding. Jesuits did not retreat. They listened. They learned. They adapted. To them, science does not threaten faith. It refines it. In a cosmos 13 billion years old, there is more room for God, not less. And the Black Pope, guiding his order, knows this, that humility before creation is one of the purest forms of worship. Reflections on the sky as we rest beneath our own canopy of stars. Let us reflect on the strange beauty of this truth, that men who renounce the world have helped us understand it, that robes worn in the dark have turned their gaze toward the light, and that the universe, vast, ancient, mysterious, is not too big for faith, but may in fact be its fullest canvas toward the next horizon. In our next chapter, we'll turn back from the sky to the soil of recent memory, to a century of war, revolution, and intelligence, and the Jesuits who walked quietly through its most dangerous shadows. But for now, close your eyes. Let the stars above become soft lanterns in your dreams. And remember, even in the silence of deep space, there is music. And somewhere in Arizona, a Jesuit priest is still listening. Beneath the roar of guns and the whisper of secrets, the 20th century unfolded in tides of war, revolution, and silent battles. Empires fell, new powers rose, and the world was reshaped by conflict, seen and unseen. In this theater of shadows, where spies traded secrets in coded letters and allegiance blurred like smoke, the Jesuits moved with a careful step, not as soldiers, but as watchers and guides, their mission cloaked in prayer and intellect. Tonight, We follow these black-robed figures through the labyrinth of war and espionage, where faith and secrecy entwined in a slow dance of power and conscience. The quiet before the storm, before the world plunged into the chaos of 2 world wars. Jesuit networks stretched wide, spanning Europe, the Americas, and Asia. Their schools and missions became conduits for information more subtle than any telegram or cipher. While governments prepared armies, Jesuits prepared minds, teaching languages, history, and ethics, forming leaders who would later face the turmoil ahead. World War I. Confessions and codes. The First World War shattered old certainties. Jesuit priests served as chaplains on battlefields, ministering to souls caught between mud and machine gun fire. But their role was not only spiritual. Some carried messages between diplomats, others listened carefully to prisoners' words, gathering intelligence in confessionals where silence was sacred. Yet truths often slipped like shadows between prayers. The Black Pope, far from the trenches, coordinated quietly, ensuring Jesuit missions remained places of refuge and insight. Between the wars, rising ideologies, the fragile peace after 1918 gave way to darker storms. Totalitarian regimes rose, promising salvation through strength. Jesuits faced new challenges. Schools closed under fascist regimes, priests arrested for speaking against oppression. Yet the society endured, its members weaving networks of resistance and information protecting those persecuted, while keeping faith with a world fraying at the edges. World War II. Silent warriors. The second global conflict was fiercer, but Jesuits remained steadfast. Some risked their lives hiding Jews and refugees. Others served as secret couriers for the Allies, smuggling documents through occupied territories. The Black Pope, as superior general, would have heard reports of these quiet acts, of courage cloaked in black robes, of faith used as shield and sword alike. In Rome, the society balanced delicate diplomacy, navigating Vatican neutrality, while fostering covert aid. Cold War shadows. With the war's end, a new battle emerged, a contest not of guns, but of ideology. Communism's spread alarmed many, and Jesuits found themselves in a complicated role. Some provinces leaned left, supporting liberation theology and grassroots movements. Others aligned with conservative forces, wary of Marxist atheism. Amid this tension, Jesuits often acted as intermediaries, facilitating dialogue where diplomacy failed, and reporting to the Vatican on shifting political landscapes. Espionage and the Jesuit ethic. Could priests be spies? Jesuit training teaches discernment, reading the signs of the times without losing sight of conscience. While not agents of espionage in the traditional sense, Jesuits' global presence and networks made them invaluable observers. The Black Pope would have balanced this carefully, encouraging vigilance, but forbidding betrayal of the confessional seal or moral integrity. The Jesuit in the intelligence web. Throughout the Cold War, rumors swirled of Jesuit involvement in intelligence circles. Some whispered of Jesuit connections to the CIA or Vatican intelligence services. Others spoke of the society's clandestine influence over political outcomes. While much remains secret, it is clear the Jesuits walked a tightrope, guiding conscience amid conflicting loyalties, bearing witness to history's dark turns, yet always bound by faith and honor. A post-war reconciliation in the decades following the Cold War. The Jesuits helped rebuild war-torn societies. They advocated for peace and reconciliation, advised emerging governments, and worked to heal wounds left by decades of conflict. The Black Pope oversaw these efforts with a steady hand, encouraging missions that embraced both justice and mercy. Legacy of the Silent Guardians as night deepens. Consider this. Wars are often remembered by battles won and lost. But history is also shaped in silent rooms, where knowledge is shared quietly, where courage is exercised through prayer and patience. The Jesuits of the 20th century may not appear in headlines, but their shadow lingers in the decisions that shaped nations. And the Black Pope, keeper of secrets, walked alongside them all, a shepherd in the darkness, guiding without fanfare. Closing reflection. As you settle into rest, let your mind drift through time's vast corridors, where faith met conflict, and silence carried its own power. The Black Pope took these stories to his grave, stories of war, of shadowed alliances, of the fragile hope that can bloom even amid ruin. Breathe slowly. In the quiet there is peace, and in peace the world is reborn again. In our next chapter, we will turn to the whispered secrets of forbidden knowledge, the books and manuscripts the Black Pope guarded from prying eyes. Sleep well, dear listener. The night enfolds you gently. Behind high walls and prayerful silence. Once every decade or two, the most powerful Jesuits in the world gather not to proclaim, but to discern. No fanfare, no incense-laden ceremony, only silent humility and the weight of centuries. They come from every continent, from desert missions, mountain retreats, busy classrooms, and war-torn cities. They bring with them languages, wounds, hopes, and vows, and together they form a circle, a spiritual parliament beneath no flag, ruled only by conscience. This is the General Congregation, the highest governing body of the Society of Jesus, and from within it emerges the man they will obey until death, the new Superior General, the next Black Pope. Tonight, we are allowed quietly to listen at the edge of that sacred threshold. When the general dies, the congregation only gathers at crucial moments. Usually, when the superior general dies, or when he resigns, a rare event, as Jesuit generals traditionally serve for life. The moment is solemn, but not tragic. The death of a general is a passing of the flame. And now the society must choose the next bearer of that invisible torch. A date is set, letters are sent, and across the globe, senior Jesuits prepare to leave their missions, some from icy hills, some from villages with no roads. They gather in Rome, one by one, in silence. No campaign, no candidate. There are no debates. No leaflets, no slogans, no votes lobbied for and whispered deals. In the Jesuit tradition, ambition is death to leadership. Before any discussion of names, the congregation enters a phase called murmuratio, 4 days of private, one-on-one conversation. Each delegate may speak to others about whom they believe fit to lead, but only in pairs. Only in questions, not endorsements, and only with spiritual intent. No one campaigns, no one asks for the role. To desire it is, by definition, disqualifying. The spirit, not the spotlight. The goal is not to elect a powerful man. It is to discern whom the Holy Spirit may be quietly preparing, a man likely unaware of what awaits him, or perhaps dreading it. When the days of murmuratio are done, The voting begins. The ballots are written by hand. One name, folded, cast, counted in silence. There is no white smoke, no bells, only stillness. And then a decision that may guide the society for 30 years or more. The weight of the moment, the man chosen rises slowly. There is no thunderous applause. He does not step into a throne. He bows his head. He prays God, and in that quiet instant, the mantle of the Black Pope descends, not as glory, but as burden. He will speak for 15,000 men. He will navigate a shifting world. He will read reports from jungles, prisons, and policy rooms. And he will keep secrets none may know, governing the gathered once the general is elected. The congregation does not dissolve, it continues, sometimes for months, not just to celebrate, but to govern. Documents are drafted, constitutional matters addressed, new priorities set for the coming decades. What is the state of the world? Where is the church in need? What does it mean to be a Jesuit in this age? These are not political questions. They are spiritual ones. They are answered not with slogans, but with discernment. What is said, what is never written, much of what is spoken in the congregation is never published. The minutes may list topics, but not the soul behind them. For within those walls stories are told of Jesuits arrested in China, of schools bombed in Africa, of crises in theology and miracles in unexpected places. These stories do not make the news, but they shape decisions that change lives. And the new Black Pope listens to them all. His silence is not distance. It is DEPTH, a global order in miniature in the room. You may find a theologian from Germany sitting beside a farmer priest from the Andes, a linguist from the Philippines beside a human rights lawyer from South Sudan. Each voice equal, each vote sacred. The congregation is a microcosm of the world the Jesuits serve, united not by nation, but by mission. And at its center stands the man they have just elected, a servant who will never again act alone. The oath and the lockbox at the congregation's end. Final statements are recorded. Decrees passed. Resolutions signed, but not everything is shared. Some declarations are sealed, not out of fear, but protection. There are names that must not be spoken. Countries where Jesuit presence is still illegal. Crises so fragile even. Acknowledgement is dangerous. These are stored under lock and oath, carried by the general, and whispered only in the quiet corridors of trust. When the world does not know, the world outside Vatican walls will likely not notice the general congregation. It will not trend on social media. No breaking news bulletin will interrupt the day. And yet, from this quiet assembly come decisions that may shape education, social justice, interfaith dialogue, and the future of faith itself. The Black Pope does not seek permission. He does not require applause. He returns to his desk, and he begins. A final thought as you prepare for rest. Consider this rarest of councils, a gathering where power is passed without ambition, and leadership begins. In stillness, the general congregation is not only a meeting. It is a ritual of trust, a renewal of purpose, a binding of hearts to a single flame, and when the doors close behind them, the world remains unaware, but not untouched. At the center of the Catholic world stands a man in white, the vicar of Christ, the Bishop of Rome, whose face is seen by millions, whose words are weighed like gold. But just beyond the light of that public throne, there is another man cloaked in black, rarely photographed, seldom quoted, and yet watching, always. He is not Pope. He does not bless crowds. He signs no encyclicals, appears in no conclave. And still, his presence moves like a current beneath still waters. The Black Pope, the superior general of the Society of Jesus. Tonight, we step into that delicate corridor between the visible and the unseen, between papal majesty and Jesuit quiet, to ask a question the world has often whispered. Does the Black Pope serve the pontiff or steer him? An oath of obedience from its birth, the Society of Jesus was rooted in fidelity. Ignatius of Loyola made it clear. Jesuits would not just serve the Church. They would serve the Pope directly. The feigned fourth vow, unique to the Society, commands absolute obedience to the Holy Father in matters of mission, movement, and faith. Jesuits do not question the Pope's authority. They are formed to follow, and yet, from the very beginning, their intellect and loyalty gave them influence. For what king does not confide in his wisest counselor? The Pope's most trusted men throughout history, Jesuits have often served as confessors to popes, a role that requires not rank, but trust. To hear a pope's confession is to hold the burden of a soul that shapes nations. It is to see the man behind the tiara, to know the tremble in the voice beneath the blessing. Jesuit confessors did not advise with commands, but with questions, with clarity, with the spiritual exercises that guide a soul toward honest self-reflection. In this intimate space, the Black Pope was never far. He may not have heard the confession, but the one who did answered to him, a chessboard of influence in centuries past. When monarchs schemed and cardinals jostled for papal favor, Jesuits were often accused of manipulation. Protestant reformers saw them as secret kingmakers, some Catholic. Bishops resented their proximity to power. Jesuits did not wear silk. They did not host salons or curry favor. But they shaped minds, and minds once shaped influence kingdoms. Some popes leaned heavily on Jesuit wisdom. Others kept them at arm's length, but none ignored them, because behind every Jesuit voice is a formation refined over decades, a discipline sharper than politics. Moments of friction loyalty does not mean agreement. There have been times when the superior general and the Pope have clashed over doctrine, over policy, over interpretation of mission. One of the most noted examples came in the 20th century when Jesuits in Latin America embraced liberation theology, a movement blending Catholic teaching with advocacy for the poor. Some in Rome saw this as dangerously political. The Vatican ordered the Jesuits to reconsider. The Black Pope at the time, Pedro Arup, stood between obedience and conscience. He reigned in excess. He affirmed the mission. And he bore the weight of both sides. The papacy watched. The Society recalibrated. The general never raised his voice. A papal paradox, the Pope is supreme. The Black Pope is obedient. And yet, the superior general often serves longer, knows more of the Church's ground-level workings, and oversees an order more organized than many dioceses. He is not a rival, but neither is he irrelevant. He is not above the Pope, but sometimes he may see farther, because the Pope must carry the Church. The Black Pope must carry the minds who carry it. Counsel in the quiet, unlike the Pope, The superior general gives no public blessing. He does not wave from balconies. He does not write encyclicals or appoint bishops, but his counsel may shape those who do. When popes face decisions on doctrine, diplomacy, or disaster, they may call on Jesuits, sometimes for a report, sometimes for a study, sometimes for a single whispered sentence that changes everything. These moments are never photographed, but they leave fingerprints on the soul of the Church. The Jesuit Pope then came, 2013. For the first time in history, a Jesuit was elected Pope, Jorge Mario Bergoglio, the Archbishop of Buenos Aires. He took the name Francis, and suddenly the roles reversed. The man in white was formed by the society. The Supreme Pontiff wore the cassock once worn by the obedient. What did this mean for the Black Pope? Many assumed the society would rise in influence, that Jesuits would now shape every policy, but the reality was quieter and stranger. Pope Francis distanced himself from his own order, perhaps to protect it, perhaps to ensure its autonomy. The general continued his work, and the Pope, though Jesuit in soul, remained Pontiff first, mutual mirror. In truth, the black and white popes are not in competition. They are reflections. One lives in silence. The Usen other speaks to the world. One steers a single order. The other carries the weight of all. But in both roles, the heart must remain the same, rooted in prayer, shaped by discernment, humbled by the complexity of the human soul. Where one ends, the other begins. A final thought in the stillness as your eyes begin to close. Let the tension between power and obedience dissolve into peace. The Black Pope is not a puppet master, nor is he a servant lost in shadows. He is something rarer, a steward of influence who chooses restraint, a counselor who leads without spotlight, a man who could shape kings but chooses instead to shape character. In our next chapter, we will follow the strange ascent of the Jesuit Pope himself, and what it meant when the white robe and black robe finally became one. Rest now. History continues in whispers, and tonight you've heard one of them. For nearly 5 centuries the Jesuits lived beside the throne, never on it. They served popes, advised popes, challenged popes, obeyed popes. But they were never meant to become one. That was part of their formation. They were thinkers, not princes. They preferred the margins to the spotlight. They shaped others for power, but turned it away when offered. And yet, in March of 2013, a puff of white smoke curled into the cold Roman sky. The crowd leaned forward. A name was spoken, Habemus Papam, Jorge Mario Bergoglio, a Jesuit, a man of black robes and long silences, now clothed in white, the first Jesuit Pope, the first from the global South. And in his choosing a quiet question began to echo in the halls of the Curia. What happens when the white Pope was formed in the shadow of the black? An unlikely choice. He was not the favorite. Cardinal Bergoglio had almost retired into obscurity. He had submitted his resignation twice. He walked the streets of Buenos Aires alone, took the bus, cooked his own meals, and read Dostoevsky by a dim lamp. When his name emerged from the Sistine Chapel, it surprised even him. He stepped onto the balcony not as a triumphant heir, but as a man carrying a heavy silence. He bowed to the crowd. He asked for prayer. And in that gesture, the world saw something different. The Jesuit in the white robe, Pope Francis, brought with him a deeply Jesuit soul, one formed by Ignatian discipline, by spiritual exercises that demand self-emptying. He spoke plainly. He wore simple shoes. He declined the palace apartment. But what many did not see was the deeper transformation, not in style, but in substance, that he led with discernment. He governed as a man formed in communal obedience, not hierarchical command. He was a pope, but also a spiritual director to the world, a general who became pontiff for centuries. The Jesuit general had been the highest Jesuit authority, but now one of their own sat above even him. The world assumed the society of Jesus would rise in favor. Some whispered of dominance, of inside influence, but they misunderstood Jesuit formation. Pope Francis had lived under the discipline of the Black Pope. He knew its rigor. He respected its boundaries, and so in his first months he distanced himself from the society. He received their general, yes, but formally. He offered praise, but gave no special privilege. He understood that too much closeness would erode trust, not only in him, but in the very order that had shaped him. A return to the margins under Francis. The Church began to look outward. He spoke of the poor, the displaced, the forgotten. He challenged global powers, questioned capitalism's moral cost, and opened the Church's heart to wounded souls. These were not political gestures. They were deeply Ignatian. Jesuits are trained to look at the world through the eyes of Christ, crucified, to seek him among the marginalized, to find holiness in Brokeness. Francis was not inventing a new papacy. He was remembering an old mission. The Black Pope watches while Pope Francis addressed the world. The superior general remained in shadow. At the time of Francis's election. The general was Adolfo Nicolas, a Spanish priest known for his wit, humility, and fierce intellect. Nicholas and Francis had served at opposite ends of the globe, but shared a similar spirit. They met in quiet. They spoke softly. And then, as always, the Black Pope returned to his desk, while the White Pope stepped into the storm. Later, in 2016, Nicholas would retire, one of the few Jesuit generals to do so voluntarily. His successor, Arturo Sosa, would now walk the Jew line between collaboration and distance, between the order's autonomy and its reflection on the throne. Unity. Without absorption, it would have been easy for the Jesuits to bask in reflected glory, to gain favors, appointments, prestige. But that is not their way. Pope Francis had no intention of making the Church a Jesuit machine. He selected bishops from diverse backgrounds, kept the society at arm's length in public affairs, and often critiqued the kind of rigid Jesuit intellectualism that forgets the heart. His papacy honored his roots, but he did not plant the Church. In them, he remembered what Ignatius taught, that the mission must always serve the whole body, not a single part. Two flames, one fire, with a Jesuit on the throne. The black and white popes no longer stood as symbols of tension, but as two expressions of the same fire, one silent, shaping minds behind walls, one visible, guiding hearts across the world, where one governs with restraint, the other leads with visibility. Together they offered a church that could be both disciplined and compassionate, rooted and responsive, wise and brave. The first. And the last? Will there be another Jesuit pope? It is impossible to know. Francis's election was an anomaly, the result of history's perfect convergence of timing, spirit, and courage. But perhaps it was more than coincidence. Perhaps, for one moment in time, the Black Pope's way was called to the front, not in secret, not behind the curtain, but in the full light of day. And perhaps the world, for a little while, saw what it meant to lead not with control, but with conscience. A gentle benediction as you prepare to rest. Let your thoughts return to that simple moment in 2013, the man in white, standing quietly, bowing before he spoke. He was not only the Pope, he was the fruit of a formation centuries deep, and though the world called him Holy Father, he still carried within him the quiet flame of Ignatius, the whisper of obedience, the burden of discernment, the humility of a black robe beneath the white dot. There is no state funeral, no throngs of mourners in the square, no white doves released into the Roman sky, only a black cassock folded neatly, a desk left undisturbed, and a chair once occupied by the weight of the world, now gently still. The superior general of the Society of Jesus, the man they once called the Black Pope, has died, not with spectacle, but with silence. Tonight we reflect on this passing, not as tragedy, but as ritual, a return to stillness, a life absorbed into the great quiet of the Church. When the general falls, a Jesuit general is elected for life. His role is not political, but spiritual, not temporary, but enduring. And so when he dies, it is not only a vacancy that is felt, it is the tremor of a vast, unseen network losing its heart. The society pauses. Provincials lower their voices. Letters are sent across the globe, short and spare. The Father General has passed into the Lord. There is no scramble for power, no declarations, only silence. For the man who guided and whispers deserves nothing less than reverence. A funeral without faces. The general's funeral is often simple, held in the Church of the Jesuit in Rome, the mother church of the Jesuits, where Saint Ignatius himself lies beneath the altar. A few rows of black-robed men, candles flickering near the tabernacle. A homily offered not with eulogy, but gratitude. There are no statues raised, no medals given, no litany of achievements. Because the Black Pope never lived for recognition. His was a hidden life, and so, too, is his farewell. The weight he carried alone with his death. The society loses more than a leader. It loses a vault of memory, a keeper of secrets. The superior general is told everything, the brokenness in missions, the crises in conscience, the fears of bishops, the doubts of scholars. He reads what no one else sees. He listens to what no one else is meant to hear. And when he dies, much of this vanishes with him. Some secrets are written, yes, locked in archives, passed to trusted aides, but most are held in the soul. And when that soul returns to God, the truths it carried go with it. The office is empty for the first time in years. The Curia Generalizia in Rome feels hollow. His office door stays closed. His chair is untouched. The portraits of past generals hang heavier on the wall. Those who worked beside him now speak in half-voices, not out of grief alone, but respect. They remember the mornings he arrived before dawn, the letters he read slowly, eyes closed between pages, the quiet sighs before difficult decisions. He was not always beloved, but he was always listened to. And now the society listens to his absence. The next discernment begins with the general's passing. A new journey quietly begins. Jesuit. Provincials around the world begin to prepare. They reflect, pray, and listen for names, not for power, but for calling. A general congregation will be summoned. We have seen it before. A slow gathering, like the turning of seasons. But for now, no votes are cast. No decisions made. The space must remain empty. Just long enough for grief to deepen into wisdom, just long enough for the Spirit to move through the silence. A legacy without inscription, there is no plaque that captures what a general gives. No monument that can measure what he endures. His legacy lives in the decisions he never discussed. In the priest he reassigned before scandal emerged. In the seminary he defended when funding fell short. In the letter he never sent because he knew silence would serve better than argument. He is remembered not in what he built, but in what he preserved, not in noise, but in discretion, and then stillness. Eventually the bells are rung, not in alarm but in ritual. His body is laid to rest, often in Rome, beneath a slab with only name and date. He returns to the earth just as Ignatius did. No greater, no smaller, equal. In death, equal in vow. The world goes on. The church stirs. But for one moment, the society of Jesus is utterly still. The eternal confidential. There are questions only the general could answer. Moments when he stood between worlds, between pope and province, between heresy and healing, between justice and diplomacy. He made those decisions without applause. He bore their weight without relief. And now they are buried with him, not lost, but resting in the hands of God. There is something beautiful about this, the humility of a man whose greatest acts will never be known. A final thought in the quiet as you drift now toward sleep. Consider the dignity of that hidden life. Black Pope does not die a celebrity. He dies a servant. He leaves behind no memoir, no dramatic farewell, just a society still intact, still reaching the world, still faithful. His absence is not empty. It is full of memory, echoing softly in the halls he once walked alone. In the hushed corridors of power there exists knowledge, not meant for every ear. Not because it is simple, but because it is heavy, like a shadow stretched across centuries, whispering truths that unsettle and secrets that burn to silence. The Black Pope carried some of these burdens, not by choice, but by the very nature of his office. Tonight, we explore what it means to hold forbidden knowledge, a treasure and a curse, guarded behind closed doors and buried beneath layers of faith, politics, and fear. A library hidden in plain sight. The Jesuits are famed for their scholarship. Their libraries, sprawling and rich, hold manuscripts from every corner of the world. Ancient texts, heretical tracts, and arcane lore. Many of these volumes are public. Many are sacred, but some are veiled. Rare manuscripts locked in iron cages, tones written in codes only the initiated can read, documents that detail encounters between church and crown, between mystics and monarchs, between knowledge and power. The Black Pope oversaw these collections, not as a mere librarian, but as a custodian of shadows, secrets of science and spirit. In the centuries when the Jesuits were explorers and scientists, they gathered not only geography and botany, but also philosophies deemed dangerous. Their inquisitive, Minds touched on alchemy, on the mysteries of the stars, on the boundaries between science and sorcery. Some knowledge was embraced, some was suppressed. For the line between divine truth and heresy is thin, and those who cross it risk exile or worse. The superior general's role was to discern, to decide which knowledge could be shared and which must be sealed away, locked in the vaults of silence. Whispers of the occult. There are persistent rumors of Jesuit engagement with the occult arts, of secret rites performed in hidden chambers, of manuscripts describing angels and demons and the thin veil between. Most historians dismiss these tales as myth or propaganda, but the Black Pope, closer to the truth than most, would have been aware of these stories. Whether fact or fiction, they shaped fear and faith alike. And in guarding these stories, he protected the Church's fragile balance between knowledge and belief, between power and mystery. The index and censorship. For centuries, the Church maintained an index of forbidden books. Many of these works found their way into Jesuit libraries. Some were banned outright. Others were kept under careful watch. The Black Pope had to navigate these contradictions, respecting papal authority while preserving intellectual freedom. In this tension lay great responsibility. To protect the Church's doctrine, while safeguarding the spark of curiosity and discovery, he walked a narrow path, balancing dogma with daring, silence with scholarship. The lost text. Some knowledge vanished without a trace. Books burned, scrolls shredded, letters destroyed, but whispers remain that the Black Pope held keys to secrets lost to time, texts that might rewrite history, reveal hidden prophecies, or expose truths too dangerous for the world. And though the general's archives are sealed, occasionally fragments slip through, stories told in shadow, fragments of forbidden wisdom lingering in the margins. Guarding the threshold, the Black Pope was a gatekeeper, not just of information, but of consequence. What knowledge shapes the world, and what knowledge destroys it? He carried this question daily. To reveal too much is to invite chaos. To reveal too little is to betray truth. He held the line, ensuring the Church remained a sanctuary, not a battleground. A burden too heavy. Imagine the weight of knowing what you cannot share, of guarding truths that could shatter faith or foment fear, of living in silence, surrounded by secrets that isolate. This is the loneliness of the Black Pope. He is neither villain nor hero, but a man shaped by the paradox of power and discretion. In this quiet tension, he lived and died. The quiet power of mystery. Perhaps the greatest secret is that some knowledge is best left in mystery, not because it is evil, but because it asks us to be humble. The Black Pope reminds us that history is layered, that truth wears many faces, and that some doors are meant to remain closed, at least for now. A gentle lullaby as you close your eyes. Let go of the need to know everything. Let the shadows hold their secrets tonight. Rest in the mystery, trust the silence, and dream of the quiet guardians who keep watch. Not for glory, but for the good of us all. Not all rituals are robed in incense and choirs. Some are quiet, hidden behind stone walls and unmarked doors. Simple words spoken without audience. A single flame flickering beside a kneeling man. A vow whispered once, then never again. The Jesuits, for all their intellect and action, are bound not just by discipline, but by ritual, sacred patterns, unseen ceremonies, a code that shapes them inwardly until obedience is no longer effort, but instinct. Tonight, we step into the interior life of the Society of Jesus, where rituals are not for show, but for transformation. The long preparation becoming a Jesuit is not a decision made in haste. It takes more than a decade. A man begins as a novice, spending 2 years in silence, study, and spiritual labor. No degrees, no titles, just the slow unfolding of a soul under the watchful eye of God. He may scrub floors, teach school children, care for the dying, or walk alone for 30 days, carrying only a Bible and the spiritual exercises of St. Ignatius. It is a testing not of strength, but of surrender. The spiritual exercises at the heart of the Jesuit code lies a quiet fire. The spiritual exercises, a series of meditations and contemplations written by Ignatius himself, not meant to be read quickly, but lived day by day, hour by hour. These exercises strip away illusions, peel back pride, and lead the soul into the deep interior. Jesuits learn to ask the hardest question. What is God asking of me? And harder still, can I say yes? The first vows after the novitiate, if approved, the novice kneels. No cameras, no headlines. He takes 3 vows: poverty, chastity, obedience. He becomes a scholastic, beginning years of academic formation. But the deeper vow, the one few ever hear, still waits in silence. Only after ordination, only after decades of testing, does a Jesuit approach the final threshold. The final vows unlike other religious orders, the Jesuits make a final profession, not through ceremony, but through invitation. If and only if the general and his council discern a man ready, he is called to take his final vows. This is where the 4th vow lives: obedience. To the Pope, with regard to mission, a vow uttered softly, sometimes in a chapel, sometimes at a desk. It is binding for life. From that moment, a Jesuit belongs not to himself, but to the mission, wherever, whenever, however the Pope or the general sends him. Hidden rituals, there are rituals no one speaks of, not because they are secret in a conspiratorial sense, but because they are sacred, too delicate to display. Private letters of obedience. Personal retreats before life-altering assignments. The quiet laying on of hands before a dangerous mission. These moments are kept within the brotherhood. They are not mystical in spectacle, but powerful in intimacy. This is not theater. It is covenant. Examen in silence. The Jesuit life is built on 2 daily rhythms: the examen and the discipline of silence. The examen is a 5-step spiritual reflection, a way of reviewing the day with God, not to judge, but to see. Where did I love today? Where did I fail? Where was God speaking, and where did I miss him? This ritual, practiced daily, forms a kind of interior compass. It trains the mind to listen and the heart to stay soft, and in silence carved into their days. Jesuits learn to hear the still voice that the world often drowns out. Formation, without end even after vows. A Jesuit's formation never truly ends. They are sent into the world to teach, to preach, to heal, to listen, to translate ancient texts, or argue philosophy, or counsel a teenager in grief. Each of these acts is part of the code, a living ritual, not bound to candlelight, but carried in the way they walk, the way they listen, the way they choose restraint. Over noise, the general as living code, the Black Pope does not enforce ritual. He embodies it. His life is a mirror of the exercises. He governs by reflection, not impulse. He speaks sparingly, writes carefully, decides slowly. He becomes the code, so that others may follow it more easily. His presence reminds the society of what they are, not merely priests or scholars, but contemplatives in action, a bond beyond blood. The Jesuit code is not written in ink alone. It is lived in body and breath. Jesuits can spend years apart, speak different languages, never meet face to face, but when one enters the room, another knows him instantly, not by his name, but by his way of being. This is brotherhood, forged, not in fire, but in silence and vow. A closing reflection as you rest now. Let your thoughts soften like pages turning. Imagine a candle flickering beside a man in a simple room. No audience, just the sound of breath and the whisper of a vow spoken once and never forgotten. The Jesuit code is not a map, but a way of walking. And the Black Pope, in his final stillness, remains a keeper of its rhythm. Above the ancient city, the sky stretches wide and silent, a velvet tapestry of stars, whispering secrets older than stone. For centuries the Jesuits have looked upward, their eyes searching the night not only for science, but for signs, for meaning, for God's hand woven through the cosmos. In the quiet observatories cloistered within Vatican walls, the Black Pope held a delicate trust between the mysteries of heaven and the doctrines of earth. Tonight, we journey through the heavens, tracing the paths where faith and reason entwine. A legacy written in stars. The Jesuits have long been pioneers of astronomy. As explorers of both spirit and science, they charted planets and comets, catalogued stars, and mapped the moon's silent face. In the 16th and 17th centuries, Jesuit astronomers like Christoph Clavius and Giovanni Battista Riccioli challenged the old worldviews, balancing the Church's teachings with the new language of the heavens. Their work was meticulous and measured, a dance of faith seeking understanding, and science seeking truth. The Vatican Observatory, founded in the late 19th century, the Vatican Observatory stands as a testament to this enduring quest. Its telescopes peer beyond earthly borders, into the vast unknown. Jesuit priests, armed with knowledge and reverence, scan the skies for answers to questions both cosmic and spiritual. What is the origin of the universe? How does the divine order reveal itself in the stars? The Black Pope was quietly involved, a guardian not only of doctrine, but of curiosity, celestial signs and prophecies throughout history. The heavens have been read as a celestial book. Eclipses, comets, and planetary alignments were not mere phenomena, but messages, omens to be interpreted. Jesuits walk the line between superstition and science, aware that the faithful might see in the skies both hope and fear. The Black Pope understood this duality. He knew when to caution and when to encourage, balancing skepticism with wonder, the dialogue of faith and reason in the age of Galileo. The Jesuits played a complex role. While the Church condemned heliocentrism, many Jesuit scientists quietly pursued its truths, testing, observing, debating. This tension is a metaphor for the entire Jesuit mission, to hold together seemingly opposing forces, faith and reason, tradition and progress, silence and voice. The Black Pope's stewardship was a reflection of this delicate dialogue. maintaining harmony in a world of discord. Stars, as metaphor stars, have always symbolized guidance. A light in the darkness. For the Jesuits, the heavens became a mirror, reflecting the journey of the soul, the long nights of study, the search for truth through layers of mystery, the patient waiting for dawn. The Black Pope's own life was like a star, rare, bright, and distant, seen only by those who knew where to look. Modern discoveries and challenges in recent centuries. Jesuit astronomers have contributed to discoveries of novas, dark matter, and cosmic radiation. They work quietly, often far from public attention, merging their faith with rigorous science. Yet, challenges remain. How to reconcile scientific advances with the mysteries of faith. How to preserve humility in the face of cosmic vastness. The Black Pope's legacy is a reminder to never cease searching and never forget to wonder. A prayer beneath the stars. Imagine a Jesuit priest standing in the cool night, gazing upward. Telescope beside him. In that moment, science becomes prayer. Observation becomes meditation. The sky offers no easy answers, only questions, only beauty. And in this silence, the soul finds peace, the eternal night as you prepare to drift toward sleep. Picture the night sky, endless, deep, and still. Know that even in darkness, light persists. Even in silence, there is song. The Black Pope watched these stars with reverence. And now his watch continues among the constellations of memory and faith. In the final hours of night, when the world holds its breath and dreams deepen, the Black Pope's secrets linger, not as burdens, but as gentle shadows woven into the fabric of time. Some truths are not loud. They do not demand to be known. They whisper softly, carried on the quiet currents of faith and memory. Tonight, we close our journey with these whispers, embracing the mystery that remains, and finding peace in what is unseen. The weight of silence. To carry secrets is to carry silence. A silence heavy with meaning, and light with release. The Black Pope bore this weight, not as punishment, but as sacred trust. He understood that some doors must remain closed, not to hide but to protect. The silence he kept is a sacred pause in history's endless conversation, inviting us to listen with quiet hearts. Legacy beyond words. What remains after the Black Pope's passing? Not scrolls or proclamations alone, but a legacy etched in the invisible ink of intention and care. His life reminds us that power is often gentle, that influence can be a quiet force, and that the deepest truths are sometimes those never spoken aloud. In the end, his story is ours, a call to humility, to reflection, and to respect the shadows as well as the light. The gentle art of mystery is not absence. It is presence in a different form. It invites us to wonder, to dream beyond certainty. The Black Pope's secrets are threads in a vast tapestry, some bright and visible, others soft and fading at the edges. They teach us that not all answers are meant for the waking mind, that some stories belong to the night, a quiet benediction as you lie still, feeling the slow rhythm of your breath. Imagine a final benediction, a blessing whispered through time. May the secrets we hold bring wisdom, not fear. May the shadows around us soften, not harden. May the night cradle you in calm, and the dawn greet you with gentle light. The eternal watch. Though the Black Pope is gone, his watch continues. In libraries unopened, in prayers whispered, in choices made quietly around the world. He remains a sentinel in the night, a guardian of what we cannot yet know, and a guide for what we can dream. Drifting into dreams now, let your eyes close slowly, and your thoughts float softly like leaves on a gentle stream. Rest in the knowledge that some secrets are held in trust, and that mystery is a form of grace. The night enfolds you, calm, safe, and still. When the final candle is extinguished, and the quiet settles over ancient stones, the Black Pope's story does not end. It moves beyond the veil, into whispers carried by the wind, into echoes that linger in the corridors of time. Some secrets are like shadows cast by a fading light. They stretch beyond the moment, touching souls who listen carefully. Tonight, we linger here a little longer at the threshold of history and legend, where truth and mystery entwine in a gentle dance. The silence after the storm, after a life lived in the eye of many storms. There is a silence that speaks volumes. The Black Pope's silence was never empty. It was filled with contemplation, with prayers, with WATCHULESS. This silence invites us to slow down, to breathe deeply, and to honor what remains unspoken. The unseen influence, though his name may be hidden, and his deeds clouded in secrecy. The Black Pope's influence ripples outward, like the quiet pulse of a distant tide. In decisions made behind closed doors, in choices that shaped empires, in moments where faith met power, his shadow still moves. The world changes, but some echoes endure. A portrait in quiet light. Imagine now a portrait painted not in bold strokes, but in delicate shades of dusk and dawn. The Black Pope is neither saint nor villain, but a man shaped by paradox, both guardian and enigma, both voice and silence. He lived in a world where truth often wears a mask, where light and shadow are intertwined, and where the deepest power often lies in what is left unsaid. The enduring mysteries like his invite us to reflect, not to solve. They remind us that not all questions have answers, that some truths are meant to rest gently in the dark. This is a gift as much as a challenge, to embrace uncertainty with grace, to find comfort in the unknown. A bridge between worlds, the Black Pope stands as a bridge between history and myth, between power and humility, between the seen and the unseen. His story calls us to remember that the world is vast, and that our understanding is always partial. There is beauty in this partial view, a beauty that invites wonder and invites peace. A quiet benediction as you prepare to drift further into sleep. Let this benediction settle softly around you. May you hold your own secrets gently. May you find stillness in the spaces between thought, and may the mystery of life be a source of calm and light. Into the night is deep now, and the stars watch silently. Rest in their glow in the quiet power of shadows, and in the gentle embrace of a story that continues beyond the veil, beyond time. Good night. The end of one story is the beginning of many whispers. The Black Pope's legacy is not carved in stone or shouted from rooftops, but whispered softly like a candle's glow in a vast, dark room. It illuminates just enough to guide, but never so much as to blind. Tonight we linger in this gentle light, tracing the lessons left behind, not in grand gestures, but in subtle grace. The power of hidden hands. True influence often moves unseen, like roots deep beneath the earth. The Black Pope wielded such power, quiet, deliberate, Enduring. His hand shaped events not through spectacle, but through patience, wisdom, and a steady heart. In this we find a reminder that the mightiest forces sometimes work in silence, and that true strength lies in restraint. Humility and authority. To govern with humility is a rare art. The Black Pope, cloaked in mystery, embodied this paradox. He knew that leadership was not about dominion, but about service, a tender stewardship of faith, knowledge, and hope. His life teaches us that authority is a gift, measured not in power taken, but in care given. The sacredness of secrets are often seen as shadows, yet they can be sacred spaces, guarded places where truth waits patiently until the world is ready. The Black Pope's secrets remind us that some things are too fragile for the light. They ask us to honor silence, to respect mystery, and to hold our own truth with gentle hands. A journey of the soul beyond history and politics. The Black Pope's story is a journey of the soul, a path marked by vows and rituals, by questions that ripple through decades, by a longing to understand God's will in an ever-changing world. We are invited to walk that path, not to emulate, but to reflect. The invitation to wondering the quiet spaces of this story. Wonder takes root. Not the loud wonder of spectacle, but the soft wonder that stirs the heart and calms the mind. Wonder invites us to pause, to listen, to see beyond the obvious. It is the legacy the Black Pope leaves, a call to look deeper and to rest in the mystery. A gentle closing as your eyes grow heavy and your breath slows. Let this gentle light settle around you. The Black Pope's secrets are not a weight, but a soft cloak, a reminder that in silence and shadow there is peace. Drift peacefully now. Let your thoughts float quietly. Like petals on a slow-moving stream, the story has ended, but the quiet legacy remains. A soft light in the night. Good night. Some lives leave no monument, no statue, no date inscribed in bronze. Only traces light as breath, like footprints on a forest path, soft beneath the leaves. The Black Pope was such a life. He did not seek legacy, and yet legacy followed him, not in headlines but in classrooms. In Manila, in refugee camps in Beirut, in libraries, in confessionals, in the quiet corners of the world where his decisions lived. Tonight we follow those silent steps and the echoes they left behind. A global pulse, the Society of Jesus stretches across continents, but its rhythm begins in one place, the desk of the Superior General. From that room in Rome, memos were sent to Mumbai, assignments given in whispers. That would shape decades. A priest transferred, a school founded, a mission greenlit in silence. The world never noticed. But children learned to read. Wounds were bound. Souls found anchorage. The Black Pope's steps circled the world, even as he remained still. The echoes in education. Jesuit education is revered for its depth, not just for forming intellects, but for shaping character. In every Jesuit school, there is a pattern, a questioning spirit, a call to justice, an invitation to encounter God in all things. This curriculum was no accident. The General touched every aspect of it, not directly, not in syllabi or exam questions, but in the deep framing of what it means to learn, what it means to grow wise. Even the teachers may not know his name, but they live within his decisions. Crisis and conscience in times of moral storm. The Black Pope was often the anchor, When civil wars broke out in Latin America, when governments turned on the church, when theology drifted toward danger, it was the general who steadied the ship. Sometimes he pulled back. Sometimes he gave quiet permission. And always he protected conscience, even when it cost him favor. Even when Rome watched uneasily, he bore those storms alone, his only reward, knowing the flame of truth had not gone out. The invisible shepherd, the Jesuits, are not parish priests. They are missionaries, scholars, and souls who walk into tension. But even they need a shepherd. The Black Pope shepherded without crook or crown. He offered guidance through carefully worded letters, through retreats, through conversations that left a man changed, not because he was commanded, but because he was seen. His was the art of spiritual fatherhood offered to thousands, most of whom never heard his voice. When he said no, decisions most remembered are often the ones never made. A mission declined. A controversial writer silenced gently. A bishop's request denied, not with fury, but with a single sentence and an enclosing piece. These invisible refusals shaped the course of empires, prevented scandal, preserved integrity. The Black Pope's no was rare, and thus sacred. The gentle memory years after his death. You may find a Jesuit who pauses when the general's name is mentioned. He will speak little. Perhaps only this. He understood. That is the true mark of leadership. Not adoration, but reverence, not charisma, but clarity. He did not ask to be remembered. And so he is. A life woven into others, every person the general guided, every soul he affirmed or redirected, carries his imprint, like threads in a vast, silent tapestry. You may never see his color, but without it, the pattern would collapse. He did not tell the story. He gave others the courage to tell their own. When the wind forgets the tree, the wind moves on. The tree remains. The Black Pope was like that, rooted, strong, unseen from afar, when times changed, when ideologies shifted. When cultures rose and fell, he remained the still point, the tree around which others bent and grew. And when he passed, the wind moved differently, not louder, just changed. A thought for those who guide quietly as you close your eyes. Think of those whose influence you'll never fully know, teachers, mentors, caretakers of truth. Not all who shape the world do so from platforms. Some shape it through presence, through patience, through long nights and unopened letters. The Black Pope was one such soul, a quiet steward of what mattered. The path disappears behind him, and now the footprints grow fainter. Time wears them down. New footsteps cross his trail, but if you listen closely, if you follow the silence, you may still feel his presence, in discernment, in integrity, in the quiet fire of truth, carefully tended. The Black Pope is gone, but his steps still guide. In our next and final chapter, we will let the night carry us toward full stillness, a coda of peace, and the soft closing of a book not meant to end. Sleep now. The footsteps are fading, but the path remains. Not every secret dies. Some, like seeds buried deep in winter soil, wait silently. They are not erased. They are kept. So it is with the Black Pope, the man behind the curtain, the shepherd behind the throne. His voice has quieted, but his presence, his legacy still lingers, like incense that clings to stone long after the ritual has ended. Tonight, We offer a final bow not to a myth, but to a man who understood power and chose silence. What he took with him, he took names. He took stories. He took decisions that will never be written down, moments when a nation's path was turned by a single letter, times when he said nothing and let others believe the silence was their own. He carried confessions no one else could hear, held together, secrets that might have split the church in two, and when the time came, he did not speak them. He did not need to, because some truths are not for the world. They are for the soul, and for God, a life of purpose, not praise you, will not find his name carved above a cathedral door. You will not read of him in textbooks unless you are already listening between the lines. He did not live for praise. He lived for mission. Each day was a page turned in silent duty. Each year another thread in the grand tapestry. Not once did he ask for spotlight. He was the man who lit candles for others to see, and then stepped aside into the dark. The paradox of power he held more influence than many popes, and yet he knelt. He made decisions that shaped continents, and yet he wept when priests failed their calling. He ruled an order spanning the world, but was never seen in public robes of grandeur. This is the paradox of the Black Pope, to be powerful and unseen, to lead and be forgotten. But forgotten only by the world, not by history, and never by heaven. The keeper of gray, the world loves black and white, yes or no, right or wrong. But the Black Pope lived in gray, the quiet middle place where truth is slow, where hearts are complicated, where pain has no easy answers. He did not rush to condemn. He did not rush to bless. He discerned. He waited. And when the time was right, he acted. A whisper in the walls in Rome. There are walls that still remember him. A hallway where his steps echoed in early morning hours. A chapel pew he favored in the back. A desk drawer he opened with reverence. These places do not speak, but they know. And if you stood there long enough, you might feel something, a hush, a warmth, a presence that once chose gentleness over applause. For those who will never be known, he lived not just for God, but for others like him, those who work without recognition, who guide without reward, who carry weight no one else sees. The teacher who never publishes, the priest who tends to dying strangers, the diplomat who averts war with one whispered sentence. He was their brother, and tonight, perhaps he is yours too. The final turn of the key eventually, the office was cleaned, the last book shelved, the last drawer closed. The key turned, the door locked. And the chapter ended, but not the story, because stories like his do not close. They recede, like low tide. Waiting, leaving room for the soul to wander in. What remains is not doctrine, not command, not even knowledge. What remains is presence, discernment, integrity. An unseen structure that still supports 1,000 lives. The Black Pope's gift was not in what he said, but in what he withheld, in the restraint that comes only from deep, interior freedom. A final benediction. So now, dear listener, rest. You have walked a long and winding path, through secrets and shadows, through oaths and silence, through memory and myth. Let it all fall away now, like leaves descending in slow spirals. Let your mind loosen its grip. Let your breath find its rhythm, and let this final thought settle in your chest. Some of the greatest truths are not meant to be revealed, but lived. And some of the most powerful lives are the ones the world never truly sees. Good night. In stillness the room is dark now, the fire is low, and the story has returned to silence. But the silence is not empty. It is full. A presence dot, so sleep now, gently. The Black Pope is gone. But the secret remains. Good night, and thank you for listening. There comes a moment, at the very end of the story, when words fall quiet, and only breath remains. A moment when we stop seeking more, not because the mystery has been solved, but because we've learned to hold it. This is that moment. The tale of the Black Pope, of shadows walked, of secrets kept, of power shaped in silence, draws now to its hushed. And as the curtain lowers, we come not to conclusions, but to reverence. The room without a name somewhere, in the heart of Rome, there is a room that bears no plaque. No statues stand at its doors. No tourists pass by. But in that room decisions were made that changed the shape of missions, of men, of movements. There are no echoes in its walls now, only stillness. But stillness, too, remembers. The unfinished letter the Black Pope was known to write late into the night. Stacks of letters, folded with care, sent to every continent. Some with comfort, some with challenge, some never sent at all. There are drawers in the curia that hold these unsent words, phrases crossed out, dates never finished, questions without response. And perhaps this is how it should be. Not every message must be delivered. Some are meant only for the one who wrote them. Where the secrets sleep, we often ask, where do the secrets go when their keeper dies? Do they vanish into dust, or do they root themselves in history, disguised as coincidence, hidden in the folds of time? The Black Pope's secrets do not scream from rooftops. They drift, they hum, they murmur in the hearts of those who quietly carry the work forward, not as burdens, but as sacred memory. A life that became a mirror. To know the Black Pope is to look not at a man, but into a mirror. He reflected the questions each of us carries. What will I do with quiet power? What will I protect when no one is watching? What do I leave behind, not in stone, but in souls? He showed us that leadership is not always seen, that truth is not always spoken aloud, and that love of God can take the shape of discretion. The Jesuit heart at the very center of this long, winding story is a man formed in the mold of St. Ignatius, a soldier of peace, a mystic of discipline. His heart beat not to the tempo of applause, but to the soft pulse of discernment. He was not perfect. He was not meant to be, but he was faithful, fiercely, fully, quietly faithful. And in this he was great. We do not need to know it all there. As comfort in admitting that not all stories must be complete. Mystery is not a whole. It is a vessel. The things the Black Pope took to his grave were not stolen from us. They were given to silence, offered back to God. Some truths are not for us to hold. They are too deep, too bright, too sacred. And so we honor them by not reaching further. The echoes in you now, ask yourself gently, what have you learned in all this listening? Not about the Jesuits, not about the Vatican, but about yourself. What secrets do you keep with care? What burdens do you carry alone? Where, in your own life, do you serve quietly? Perhaps the story of the Black Pope is not so far from your own. The Grace of letting go, it is time now to let go. Not in sorrow, but in grace. To release this story like a small boat onto the water, to let it drift into the wider sea of history, of faith, of dreams. You do not need to remember every detail. You only need to remember how it felt to walk quietly through time and be met by a man who lived with silence like prayer. A closing prayer in the dark tonight. We close with no grand finale. Only this, a quiet prayer in the dark. Not for revelation, but for rest. May the shadows you carry be gentle. May the mysteries in your heart feel like old friends. May you find peace not in answers, but in awe. And may the memory of the Black Pope, a man of silence, service, and subtle power, guide your thoughts toward stillness. One final breath now. Take a breath. Let it be deep. Let it be slow. Let it be the last word. You are safe. You are whole. You are held in a story larger than understanding. And somewhere, beneath the great dome of stars, a single candle still burns in silence. Good night. Sleep deeply. And may the sacred unknown keep you always